Okay, so good evening. Today is January 14th, Tuesday night. Welcome to our Sherborn School Committee meeting in the Dover Sherman Middle School Library. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will start with any community comments. If anyone in the audience has any comments they would like to offer.
I actually have one comment. I wasn't planning on making a comment, but we're here mostly to hear about the task force updates at the next meeting.
Okay, can you just give your name real quick? I'm sorry. Okay.
Sullivan.
Okay.
48 Woodland Street. I just have a question about, I've been following the task force and following all of the early start time, etc. Dr. Q, you may remember your daughter babysat for Emmeline for summer.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you guys have given any thought to the precess. I haven't heard any type of discussion about precess, like if it would still happen with these early start times, if that's, has been discussed at all.
Dr. Brown, I have no, we're in the implementation phase, I think, so that's more of an administrative thing at this moment. So
we're planning that everything holds the way it currently does. It just starts 45 minutes earlier. So that 15-minute pause where our buses roll in and children unload, we would still hope to have precess.
Okay. My main concern with the early start time with the precess is I probably am a bit more of a worrier than most people with the triple E. I know last year you decided not to have any activities at dusk due to triple E. Do we think there'd be a concern with that? Because I think we'll probably still have triple E, from what I understand, in the spring.
That's something that we'll just have to look at on a case-by-case basis. If we do see there's triple E, of course, we'll address and follow the guidelines given to us by our public health department and public safety, in the interest of the public safety. And the lucky thing is we do have gymnasium areas. I mean, I'm sure there are ways that we can work out some things, because I know a lot of kids do the precess, and then there are some who may not. So we'll have to just figure that out, because even with the triple E, even at that time, I'm not sure when and if we have to bring kids in or out. So.
Okay, just to know, but my daughter, she's in kindergarten, so obviously I've got a long road
right.
for her to do in the next 5 years. And she, even from her kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Barker, my daughter benefits from the precess. She's high energy, and she notices a difference when she has the I mean, I know this at home too.
Right.
She was out all day on Sunday. So from my standpoint, I'm really concerned about losing the precess, because she needs it academically, and she's high energy. I mean, hopefully she settles down, but she's like high energy.
We're pretty committed to precess, recess, break in this process. The thing about the precess is it's going to be so early in the morning. It's a question of whether or not people will be interested in some of this stuff, which you'll hear about in the presentation tonight. We can't say right away, for example, what kinds of clubs or activities we'll offer, because those need to kind of organically develop. But as a system, we're maintaining at the high school, we're maintaining our break schedule for the high school kids, because we see the benefits of it. We're maintaining the recess, which started for the middle school students, a 12-minute break after lunch out on the field, which has been fantastic. And when it's, when we have inclement weather, the kids go inside. So I'm pretty sure we'll be able to work something out. The triple E, we can't, who knows? Of course, it's supposed to be back if it's come. It usually runs in cycles, but that doesn't mean it will. And, it's going to create a host of issues, but I think we'll be okay.
I just was wondering if it's on the radar. It's on my radar because, I was seriously at the bottom of the bus stop with bug spray this last.
Yeah.
Like even at 8 o'clock they were coming out, and I personally don't get bitten as much. My daughter is the one; she's a magnet. So I, along with other parents, we're spraying in the morning. I think my daughter got a respiratory, issue late October from all the DEET I sprayed on her. So this is, a concern that wasn't last April when you were voting on this, but after this past fall, it's something that's come to light. So
I keep hoping we'll get some hard freezes and get rid of triple E and ticks and all those other hosts of non-beneficial items.
Well, my understanding is that they overwinter. They don't all die. They hibernate. So
Yeah.
we can expect those are all gonna pop up sooner than later, and.
They probably were out at the 70-degree weather we
Yeah,
had.
I had wondering
Bees
about
were,
that.
Yeah, I just
ticks
picked one
were.
up
We
my
had a
dog
tick in
today.
the-
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
classroom
picked one up my
today.
dog today.
That's,
But this is also, Kristen, this is something the Wellness Committee is actually meeting this week, and this is, ways to integrate more physical activity into the day is one of the things on our agenda. It's always kind of on the agenda and something that we're always talking about because I think as a district we see the benefit of that too. So it is something that's very much on our minds and on the Wellness Committee's mind, and something we'll be sure to continue to think about and try to be creative about going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll for sure make sure they keep moving. It does help with their brain.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Probably
So,
yours too.
yeah, it does. Thank you. Is there anything else?
No, nothing.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you. Okay, with that said, we're going to start with the reports. Dr. Brown.
I'm looking at the principal's report, which I sent to Cheryl in a Google Doc, so I apologize. It looks like the formatting got all messed up in my first paragraph there. I wanted to give an update to the benefit of responsive classroom. As you recall, 15 of our educators from Pine Hill, in addition to 15 educators from Chickering, had the benefit of being trained in a week-long course last June. And as we are dipsticking classrooms, the teachers who have been trained in responsive classroom, there's definitely a more noticeable, palpable sense of community, respect, belonging, connection, and relationships based on positive regard and respect with students. And we really value the responsive classroom approach to building community between teachers and students. And we are hopeful that we will run a second training for a second cohort of teachers this coming summer. So I just wanted to provide you an update around that. It's certainly the expectation that whether teachers are trained in responsive classroom or not, that they embrace some of the key structures that I outlined around classroom meetings, brain breaks, lots of pro-social transition cues and mechanisms for connecting throughout the day. But we're really pleased with the result of the resurgence and energy in the classrooms that are responsive classroom teacher trained. And on the teacher workshop day back in December, Beth had created an opportunity for Chickering and Pine Hill teachers who were responsive teacher trained to connect with one another, and they found that really beneficial to share reflections and strategies and ideas. So that is a responsive classroom update. The other thing I'd like to touch upon last Wednesday was the many professional development ongoings that teachers are partaking in are referenced. Last Wednesday was an early release day. We had a 2-hour PD session. Jen Ryan, our literacy coach, facilitated a session with our K through 5 teachers of literacy, and the feedback we got in the follow-up surveys was out of the ballpark. And her very skilled way of helping us shift and lift our practices and bring more consistency to our practices within and across grade levels. And the teacher feedback was really very, very strong. So we will continue to focus on literacy in our February early release day. So we've done a succession of about 6 PD sessions with lots of job embedded release time for teachers during their common planning time or additional times that they meet with our literacy coach. So it's really an impactful model that we've embraced this year.
Anybody have any questions? As for the classroom, I think my son is a little envious that he did not get one of the classrooms that was updated for the community. Apparently it's the talk of the school. So everybody likes
the innovative
classrooms. Everyone is like, oh, I wish I had one of those where you could sit on the floor or sit in a special chair. Or...
The other day I was doing a teacher observation in a 2nd grade classroom, and the kids were all with the teacher in the rug area, and then they were released to do a writing activity. And a little boy walked by where I was sitting, and I said, "Oh, am I in your spot?" He's like, "Am I at your seat or something?" And I was like, "Silly Dr. Brown, we don't have assigned seats. We get to work where we decide we work best." And it was such an eye opener thinking about how we control children when they eat, when they have biology breaks, where they sit, and a little thing is so empowering.
It is.
Such as free seating.
So thank you.
Great.
Thank you in the school for doing this and taking the initiative. Okay, so moving on, the warrant report, it's in your packet. You can read it. I signed warrants for the general bills, and that's what that is. If you're so inclined to ever go and look at them in person, they're in Town Hall, and you're more than welcome to. Moving on, we have the FY20 monthly financial report.
Correct. So in your packet, you have your financial statements as of January 10th. There hasn't been that many significant changes since when we met in November. So I basically recapped where we were. Obviously on salaries, one thing that's driving our negative variance right now is the additional educational assistance that we had to add at the beginning of the school year based on student needs. And we do have some long term coverage for substitutes encumbered, so that's why a big chunk of your substitute money all of a sudden sort of disappeared. On the expenditures, there again, no new variances to report. I did want to just share a little more information because our maintenance of buildings, we are over budget, and that's mainly being driven by your reserve for repairs. And so we've had two emergency repairs that have come up since we last met in November. The first one is the water heater started failing, so we have replaced that. And we also were having some issues with the pumps for the boiler. So we have two of them, and one was leaking and one was squeaky. And then all of a sudden they started having more issues. So at this point, one has been rebuilt, and the second one, the parts have been ordered to rebuild. All three, or both those projects, were on your on-site insight report for years down the road, that they just prematurely failed. We're finding across the campuses that our water heaters are not lasting as long as industry standards suggest. That's happened at two of our other schools too. So again, the on-site insight report is a guide for us, but not exactly what you can anticipate. And the boiler pumps too are just things that just have come up that need to be repaired. So the good news is that you've taken care of things that will come off your plan in the future. The bad news is right now, so we're running a deficit, so we're just keeping our fingers crossed that no other emergencies arise. The other thing it sort of prevents us from doing is some of the routine stuff that we have on our little checklist. We'll have to defer some of that to next year because we're sort of low on funds right now. Overall, I want to talk about out of district too. There, since we last met, there has been some significant activity. If you remember the last time I reported, we had about $125,000 of a positive variance with additional placements and some change in services. That number is down now to 10,000. If you recall too, that when we presented the budget, we had several placeholders for cases. Those were sort of the cases we knew were coming down the pike. So therefore, they're already built into your fiscal year 21 budget. It's not new things we have to change, but it's things we finally have. They've been placed, and we're having to book the expenses for this year. But
so
we'll
we weren't anticipating it in this year's budget, but it is anticipated
exactly
next year. Okay.
They were bubbling up when we did the budget, so we knew, and we took care of those. So that's the good news, is that we're not going to have to. Based on those changes we have this year, we're not looking to increase to your budget right now for next year.
Have we looked at, I'm just curious, over the past, I'm sure you have, over recent history, if we have these kind of cases bubble up on a regular basis every year, how many of those we typically see, and if we can put some cushion into our budget next year preventatively, in case, if we anticipate that every year we see 2 or 3 of these, or 1 or whatever bubble up, is there room to do that?
So we do that a little bit, but we also don't want to over budget, and so you do have circuit breaker, and what we've been doing the last couple of years, if you remember, is leaving some cushion in your circuit breaker.
Yeah.
Prior to the last couple of years, we would spend circuit breaker down every year to 0. and then we had no cushion. So my first year, we ran into the case where we had unexpected cases, we didn't have enough money in the budget, we didn't have circuit breaker, and we had to go back to the town and ask for a supplemental appropriation for our budget. So based on that, we've been stocking away, at least holding in circuit breaker, almost like a placement, to sort of give us
that's
a
our
little
slush
more
fund
cushion.
for lack of a better term, contingency fund,
Yeah. So that gives us a little protection if something comes up. And then we don't budget 100% of circuit breaker to even for the reimbursement. So we know we have built in some cushions for out of district.
Okay.
So we are looking, I mean, right now we have $23,000 left that we haven't encumbered. So we will now sort of more acutely focus on expenditures, unexpected expenditures, and see what we can pull from other funds or see what we can push off until next year.
Okay.
But we will keep you updated on that.
Okay.
Any questions on your
Anybody?
monthly report?
No. What about the FY 21 to 25 capital?
Okay, so in front of you, I've actually together a packet of stuff for your budget book. So it's three-hole punch and ready for you to put it in. So the last page of that packet is the capital. So I guess we'll do capital first.
Yes.
So as you know, the town requests that we do a 5-year capital outlook. And so the main thing that you'll be voting on tonight, and this is just our very first version, is your fiscal year 21 request, because those are the hardcore numbers that aren't placeholders. Those are things we know we want to do. And the 22, 23, 24, and 25 are what we anticipate based on our on-site insight report of projects that are coming down the pike. And that just helps the towns sort of do more long-range forecasting for expenditures that all the departments are going to have for capital. You'll see in 24, there's actually nothing on the schedule. And it's not even like there's a lot to bring forward, because you can see in 25, the only thing that's showing up right now is the tractor. So you do try to sort of even things out, but there's just some years where there's not a whole lot. So right now, we're going to leave it as is, because we see 23 with some bigger projects. But I will say some of those that's not necessarily how it's going to play out. You'll notice on the roof covering that we say we're going to probably do a roof assessment in this year, so we have a better idea of how many more years we can get out of it before we have to go.
Where does that cost get covered, like the assessment piece?
That'll just come out of your reserve.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the reserve covers little things like that, and they're not that expensive to do. So we'll just have someone come in and give us their professional opinion on how many more years we have left on it and sort of what we need to worry about. So we'll look at that for 21. So then that gives us a couple more years to still plot out what we're going to do with that. The paving is a big number that's being carried in on-site insight, and I will say that's probably an inflated number based on what we've experienced at the region, but we're just using it as a placeholder for now. But there's other projects going on at Pine Hill that will probably encompass the whole parking lot. We're talking about the access road, and that probably will come off of the school committee's direct ask and go into the DPWs with a sort of a co. But
there's no point in doing one without the other. I mean, if we know right now our parking lot and our driveway is in trouble, but we also know that it would be very helpful to have the access road done, because it would incorporate a different kind of bus travel lane, and which could provide more parking.
And just safety. I mean,
and the safety of it.
Crazy.
So it's a huge safety concern, but we have to go through the right process.
Right.
So I'm working with David Williams and Sean Colleen on that as best we can, and a step at a time. I'm confident that this will in fact somehow meld together.
Right, and what we've done in Dover too, so all the on-site insight report attacked all 3 districts the same, but paving is something that really belongs with the highway department to decide when paving needs to be done. And so we've taken it completely off Dover's, and it's just now coming up on Sherborn. So when we go meet with the Sherborn Capital Committee, we will talk about that. That may be one of the things that comes off of the schools, and it will go on to the highway department.
Yes.
And then in working backwards, so in 22, right now we have a placeholder for an EMS upgrade. That's just your energy management system. We are doing an upgrade here at the region, and both Dover and Sherborn will then piggyback on that. And the beauty of that will be one central access for our director of facilities to control all EMS functions at the building. So do the project here at the region first, and then Sherborn and Dover will piggyback. So that's a placeholder for that. And then your water storage tank, that is the price to actually do a complete reline. Again, we can monitor that. There's ways that we can do just little tests that can go down and check and see what the bottom looks like. So we'll keep monitoring that to see when that really needs to be done.
Okay.
So as far as 21, so things we're looking to do next summer, we have the HVAC unit, which is at the one that services the computer room right next to the library. If you remember, we had that on for this year, but we pushed it off just to see if there were any further directions we would go with other air conditioning at Pine Hill. It's at the time now that we probably are running past its useful life, so we are putting it on the capital request to be replaced in the summer.
Okay.
And we did get updated quotes, and so the $16,000 that is there covers both the installation and the electrical work that needs to be done to get that installed.
Okay.
So the next one is casework in the classroom. So if you know in the C wing where you sort of have those metal cases and they're all rusted in the sink.
The cabinets under the sinks.
Cabinets.
Yes.
It's in our on-site insight report to do that on operating maintenance here and there, but we just haven't had the funds to be able to do that. So we're putting all 4 classrooms that need to be done all in one package together. So it's about $5,000 a classroom to replace all that. So that's what the $20,000 represents. You'll know I made a note that we can talk with the capital to see if they want us to add that to operating, because individually the $5,000 doesn't meet the threshold. So it depends on how they want to look at that. If they want to look at it as one big project and take the $20,000, or look at it as something we should just increase our operating budget for. But we'll have that discussion with them prior to you finalizing your budget. If you recall, if you've been there, we did similar work in the teacher's lounge. And so that's where we have a pretty good price quote of what it's going to take, and that turned out really nice. And so we're looking forward to doing that. It'll just enhance those classrooms immensely. The last item I'm calling a plumbing replacement project. And this, if you remember when we last met, I thought this was going to be a combination of 2 things. The boiler water pumps, because we thought we had to drain the building to fix those. Luckily, we didn't. And we were able to fix them before they failed. So this is a little bit smaller project than we thought. But in the A and the C wings, if you know where the elbows come out and there's those valves there for the heating loops, those are original and probably not in the best shape. We've actually covered a lot of them so the kids can't play with them.
Yeah.
So we want to replace all 16 of those over the summer, which will require the building to be drained, fix all those valves in both wings, and that will actually be a cleaner look, but it'll also be a safety issue. So it's about $2,000 a classroom. With your 16 classrooms is your 32, and we put a contingency in there.
Okay.
So you're looking at a fiscal year 21 capital request for Pine Hill of $71,000.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Just are these estimates or some of them are quotes that you already received?
All of these are quotes.
Quotes. Okay.
Because we will then take the quotes with us to capital so they can see those. So we have, where we can, we try to get 3 quotes, but these numbers are based on at least 1 quote for right now.
Okay.
So with regard to you doing the air conditioning in the computer room, so Mike and I are on that committee. We're meeting with Adrian. But Adrian, I've been talking back and forth, and he said this isn't a one-size-fits-all. You'll do it, like air conditioning things are done in part anyway. So this would be something that we would leave as is anyway, because it's not going to, the way the building's designed, you can't just put a whole
Right,
AC unit.
no, and our only thought was that we would be able to do something, combine that with the library.
Right.
But at this point, I don't think we're gonna get that done in time
No.
before this potentially would fail, and it's important to
No.
keep that area.
And this past year, we didn't have the heat that we
I
had
know.
last year, so I have all
Right.
these temperature readings and stuff, and so now it's skewed again.
Right,
So,
right,
but of course, this past weekend was a poor indicator of,
yeah.
Could use-
of January.
Could've used it in
So,
January.
I'm kind of at a loss of what to do.
Right,
But we're figuring it out. So Adrian's working with me because he's done it
perfect.
a few times.
Good,
So,
good.
okay.
So I will request the committee take action on this initial version so that we can pass it along to the town.
Okay, so we need to go ahead and do a vote to approve 71,000. So the way the motion should go is, do I have a motion to approve the capital item request amount of $71,000 for us to take to the town? Is that correct? Is that how it should say?
The capital request.
Capital
Move forward
request.
to the town capital committee.
Second,
Or
or so moved.
first,
Yeah.
and second is Nancy. Okay, any discussions? No? All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? No? Okay. So you can move forward and we can request the money. Okay, so the continued discussion on the FY21 operating budget, is that for request for the budget for next year?
Yes, yes, this is for fiscal year 21. And so I gave you a couple of handouts. If you remember, when we met in November, we did not have the town's guidance, budget guidance, so you have that, which can go into your section 1 of your book. And then I'll just walk through each of the documents and then we'll go through them. And then you should have a summary of budget adjustments, which takes you from the budget that we presented in November and some adjustments that we have to date. That gets us up to January 14th. We've provided you with a summary of staffing. So that sort of gives you a little detail of what makes up of the staffing in every category of your budget, and then a summary of anticipated grants. And this is important because you have to realize that the things that are listed on this grant page are things that are funded by numbers outside of your operating budget. So if we ever lost one of these grants, this helps you to see what these are funding. And so I think it's important that you look at it together. And not forget that there are things that we have in Pine Hill that aren't covered by the operating budget that we're asking for the town. So I think this is a good summary of what the grants are, what their purpose is, and what we at least got for this year's grant amount award. And the last page we gave you is sort of the annual enrollment analysis that we do, and we'll walk through that. And you can put that in section 3 of your book.
Okay.
So just to bring you forward where we are with a budget adjustments that we're posting. So typically this is the time where we'll take budget adjustments for any known retirements. So we do know of 3 retirements that are official and that will take place. And so based on the salaries they're making now and what we anticipate replacing staff-wise with them, we are taking a $110,000 reduction from your current budget.
Great. Okay.
Against that, we are, if you remember, we talked about having the math intervention, so we are trying that out this year with your Title I funds. But both elementaries are bringing it into their general fund this coming year at a 0.5. There's thought going down the road that might be a shared person that could sort of go back and forth in each building and make for more consistency. But for right now, each building is adding in a 0.5. So we are using not all of this is going to be into your general fund. We're also going to continue to fund part of this through your Title I.
Okay.
So we're picking up $20,000 in Title I, and I mean in your general fund, and the rest of it is coming from your Title I. The goal is once if it's up and running and it's working, you bring it all into your general fund, right? Because you don't want to be dependent on the grants are there, not always to be dependent on, but to supplement.
Okay.
To that end, if you remember, we added the literacy specialist last year, and that was funded with your general fund, with your REAP grant, and with your Title I. So we are bringing in the money that we allocated from Title I into the general fund this year.
Okay.
So that's the $15,000. The part that's funded by the REAP grant is staying in the REAP grant.
Okay.
So that has a net impact on your in-district budget of a negative $75,000. So we're Not adding, we're actually reducing what we're asking for.
Right.
To that end, we'll share that if you look at your enrollment analysis, there's not a clear answer at this point, so we are not making a recommendation to do anything. In fact, you'll see there's a scenario A and a scenario B, because we're looking at, as we know, we had a larger kindergarten class than normal, so that'll be moving into first grade. If we did nothing to that, that's what your option A is. So the green means potentially you could have classes next year over your guidelines. But if we add the 4 sections, so if we allocated a teacher to first grade, there is potential that we could have class sizes below guidelines.
So this is what we encounter pretty much every year.
Right.
Because we run sections of 3 or 4. So the tipping point is, if you go over the tipping point, then you end up really low. If you add the section, then if you don't add the section, you end up really high. This is classic Sherborn. This has been going on since I was on the school committee in Sherborn.
Yeah.
So if you remember 3rd grade, there's that cohort of kids that we've been moving the teacher down every year. So that's the current 3rd grade. And so you see the option above, if we don't move, obviously, the teacher, you've got green. When you move the teacher down, though, because you're going, your class sizes for 4th and 5th are a little bit higher than your K through 3. You'll see leaving it at 4 sections makes all those classes based on your guidelines below your guidelines. And by having 3, though, you run the risk of being over guidelines. So it's just, there's not a clear-cut answer right now. So that's one of those things, not that our projections will change, but I think there might be some additional pieces of information that we have. We're meeting with you in January this year versus February that we did last year. So you'll still have another opportunity to look where we want to stand in March, which is your last opportunity to look at your budget. So we felt it was too early right now to make a call on this. We wanted more time to have discussion about it, see if there's alternate ways that we could address if we felt like we were going to be in a situation where we were over your guidelines, but not to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
So you can look at this, and if you have any questions, send them along to Angie, and we're more than happy to answer.
Just keep in mind that we do have different guidelines for the K3s than we do for the 4-5s. That sometimes throws me off. But I don't know how long these guidelines have been in place for Sherborn, but we've been sticking to them for a long time. I will say that.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're any different than when I was on the school committee in the 90s. So.
And so just to for the new people, I realized we use this chart, but this might be new to you. We take the 3-year growth rate, we take the 1-year growth rate, which is the projections that we gave you in the first one of your budget, and then we take one that's half of the 3-year rate. We just started doing that to look at our options, and so that gives you an idea of where you may fall. And a lot of times the 1-year growth rate is not the best because it's a blip, and the 3-year is what we're finding to be the more accurate. But just in case there's a new trend that's starting, that's why we show the 1 year.
And the large kindergarten class, when you get this large influx of kids, that throws off those projections.
Right.
If you just get a bubble of kids, it can throw off your projections in funny ways. So, but the projection model that we've been using, which is one that Bill McCall developed, and then Don came up with the 0.5 of the 3-year growth. That held really true. In fact, we were so proud of it. We were gloating this year in October when we did the October report because we were pretty close. So but the problem was it was not exact. In every instance, we were off by at least a few. And 1 or 2 kids could make all the difference in a group of 73.
Right.
Right.
Because it just throws the numbers.
That's really the
We're in a
challenge.
group of 63, or,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
Right,
I
we're
mean,
at that
depending on what
grade.
grade level you're in,
Right.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is you don't want to like add a teacher, take a teacher away, add a teacher, take a teacher away. So that's where I think we always like to, if we're going to add a teacher, we want to see that we have at least a longer period of time where we can
Right.
utilize that class, because it's the in and out that's just not good for the students or the building. So that's why, it may say, oh, just add a teacher. Well, we have to say, well, what would that mean more in the long run? Or are we just at a year, we need to figure out a way to get around it. So that's what we'll be doing for the next month or so.
And that's especially hard in elementary school where people, they grow close, form relationships, and then all of a sudden, this poor person's heartbroken because they're not going to be able to stay. And so, yeah, we really would like to avoid that. So we still have a little time to think this through.
Right. So your in-district right now is looking at an increase of 3.16. And remember when the budget that we presented to you in November had that large reserve for salaries for all of our employees and transportation. So that's assuming that's still going to hold, that we're not going to have to make any further adjustments on that. On the out of district, as I said, we had those potential placeholders already built into your budget. There was nothing that we know about today that made us want to put additional tuition placeholders in the budget. But one thing we were able to do is that the accept matrix transportation cost was approved since your last meeting. And based on the number of riders that Sherborn has and the mileage that they're going, we're able to take a $55,000 reduction from the placeholder we were holding, which is great news. So that puts you at an overall non-ask from the town of 2.17%. So we're looking at an operating budget that's $157,000 less than last year.
Okay.
Write that down because that doesn't happen very often.
I know.
That could be momentous. It's good for the town. Okay, is there anything else? Does anybody have any questions for Dawn? Any questions about how it's calculated or what we're looking at, or? I always think the projections are so interesting when y'all try to, and it always fascinates me when they're accurate. So I'm like, how do you know?
You have to remember it starts looking at from October to October. So even though you might get some kids in January,
Right.
that model already takes that into consideration. So it's the in-migration and the out-migration. So like when I say we're waiting, we're not really waiting to see what happens because the model has already sort of told us potentially what's going to happen, but it's more of how we're going to manage what we think is going to.
Right. So literally, if a family moved in with 5 kids in February, all in half in 3rd grade and half in 4th grade, twins and triplets, we don't panic because if we follow our projections and and they hold true. So otherwise, you can imagine every time somebody moves in, you'd be like, oh, geez, what's it going to mean for next year?
Right.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think you might have a placeholder for a February meeting. We're not
We do.
anticipating right now there would be a need. So your
Okay.
March meeting would be where we would bring forward any additional changes. You would have your open hearing at that point, and then make your final vote. You have the final vote on your budget. That would then go on to the meeting for the town of Sherborn in March, and then on to town meeting.
Okay. All right. So we'll decide if we need the February, but for now, it's not looking like it. I mean, we have all our numbers. We just need to.
Right, unless something
Crazy happens.
Crazy happens, but right now I don't.
Unless everyone decides to move to Sherborn, in a month. Who knows? We're very popular. Okay, so there's no other questions about budgets, which is good. We can move on to the consent agenda for the approval of the minutes from November 12th, 2019. It seems like a long time ago. Did anyone have any changes that they needed to make to that minutes that were sent to you? I didn't see any, but they looked correct to me. So Ms. Davis, Amy Davis. So if they are correct, if I could have a motion to approve them meeting
Well,
minutes.
Wouldn't you do both? You'll do the consent
I'll make it-
agenda, so you'll
Yeah.
include the donation as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the donation.
Yep.
'cause
May
it's
I
on-
offer a correction? The donation from the Salwin Fund
Yes.
is for $13,900.
Okay, well then we'll do that as adjusted. Okay, so if you see there's a memo in there from Dr. Brown about the donation from the Solon Fund, and everybody kind of knows what the Solon Fund is. If you have any questions, you can ask. And we always get the donation for that, and so it's $13,900. So if I can have a motion to approve both the meeting minutes of November 12th, 2019, and the memorandum submitting that to vote favorably to accept the $13,900 donation from the Solon Fund. So
So
Mike
moved.
moved, and second, Megan?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
May I mention something exciting? Next year, the Solon Board meets with me in December, and they're on a calendar year. And, they're able to donate the proceeds from the endowment. Next year, moving into 2021, will be the 150th anniversary of the Solon Fund.
Oh.
And the Solon Board looks forward to making a sizable donation, a sizable one-time donation to Pine Hill School to commemorate the Solon Fund. And they look forward to hearing our ideas.
How about a road with their name on it?
Not that sizable.
No, okay, that's.
That will cover it.
They'll help towards it.
We'll kick in a little. Yeah.
It is a nice
But
fund, and it really
it
does
is,
afford so much for
And
our
please
kids.
pass our appreciation on to the board, Barb, because they've been tremendous,
They really have.
just outstanding. And
It's neat, it's really neat to consider how long this fund has
It's
been in
amazing.
operation.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So we are deeply grateful that, because it does afford a lot of opportunities for our students that maybe otherwise we couldn't do. So we appreciate that. So otherwise, there is some information in your packet just for your general reading pleasure if you can't fall asleep at night. That for the regional school committee minutes that we don't have to approve, you could just read, and from the Dover School Committee if you want to see.
Did you vote the consent agenda? You did.
We just
Sorry.
did that.
Sorry, I
Mike
missed it. I was looking
moved
at something
and
else.
Megan seconded. And also, if there are any items, so like she said, we have a meeting as a placeholder for February 11th, but if we have no new things cropping up, it probably will not be that we would meet. We would meet again in March, and that's where we do our final budget analysis. So if that's okay. If there is anything that comes up, just email me and we'll put it together on the agenda and we'll host a meeting and get it addressed. Okay. So with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay. Nancy, second. Mike, second. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.